My name is Gina Walsh, and I was 28 years old the Christmas morning everything finally changed. It started with a small silver box, the kind that fits in your palm, wrapped carefully with neat corners and tied with a thin red ribbon. Nothing flashy, nothing expensive looking, just simple. I held it in my hands while standing in my parents' living room, surrounded by relatives, holiday music playing softly in the background. My mother glanced at it and laughed. "Let me guess," she said, her voice light and amused. "Another dollar store candle from the family disappointment." A few people chuckled politely. My father didn't even look up from his phone. My sister Belle smirked from the couch. "Mom, just open mine instead," she said casually. "It's actually worth something." So, I did something I had never done before in 28 years. I reached forward, took the box back, and opened it myself. 10 seconds later, my mother was crying, my father was staring at me like he'd never seen me before, and the entire room had gone silent. But to understand why that tiny box mattered so much, you need to know what it was like growing up in our house outside Syracuse, New York. Because in our family, there were two kinds of daughters. There was Belle, and then there was me. My father, Tom Walsh, was a plumber. He had thick hands, permanently rough from decades of turning wrenches and tightening pipes. He didn't talk much. He believed a man's worth was measured by simple things, whether the bills were paid, whether the roof didn't leak, whether his family had food on the table. My mother, Diane Walsh, worked at the front desk of a dental office. She liked things tidy, organized, presentable. More than anything, she liked things she could point at proudly and say, "See? We did all right." Belle was the thing she pointed at the most. My sister was 4 years older than me, and the definition of what my parents considered success. She graduated from Boston University. She married a corporate lawyer named Derek Kessler. They lived in a beautiful suburb outside Boston with clean sidewalks, perfect lawns, and houses that looked like they belonged in magazines. Belle had the degree, the career, the impressive husband, the glossy holiday photos that looked like something from a lifestyle catalog. She was exactly what my parents imagined when they pictured a successful daughter. And me? I went to community college. No fancy university. No big graduation ceremony. While Belle was attending networking events and internships in Boston, I was sitting in the public library teaching myself data analytics from online courses and borrowed books. When I was 22, I packed everything I owned into the trunk of a secondhand Honda and moved to Albany. My apartment was barely bigger than a parking space. My furniture came from thrift stores. My laptop had a cracked corner, but it was mine. Every time I came home for holidays, my mother introduced Belle first. Always first. "Everyone, this is Belle," she'd say proudly. Then she would gesture toward me like she had just remembered I existed. "And this is Gina. She's figuring things out." I was always figuring things out. Never arriving. Never finished. Never enough. One Thanksgiving, I noticed something that stuck with me longer than it should have. I was standing in the living room staring at the wall where my mother kept all the framed family photos. There were 11 frames. I counted them twice. 9 of them were Belle. Belle graduating. Belle at her wedding. Belle and Derek in Santorini. Belle and Derek skiing in Vermont. Belle smiling at a camera somewhere beautiful. The other 2 were group family photos. There wasn't a single photo that was just me. Not one. I stopped counting after that. The Christmas before everything changed was when I realized just how invisible I was in my own family. My mother gave Belle a necklace. It was beautiful. A delicate silver chain with a custom pendant engraved with Belle's initials. My mom had gone to a jeweler to order it. She had measured Belle's neck to get the chain length perfect. She knew exactly what clasp Belle preferred. She even knew which engraving font Belle liked. Belle held the necklace up to the light. "It's perfect," she said. My mother beamed like she had just handed over a piece of her heart. Then she turned to me and pushed a flat gift bag across the table. Inside was a sweater. Purple. I don't wear purple. I've never worn purple. My favorite color has always been navy blue. I've told my mother that more times than I can count. Birthday wish lists. Back to school shopping. The time she asked what color to paint the guest room. Every time, my answer was the same: navy blue. But when I mentioned it gently that night, she waved her hand dismissively. "Oh," she said. "I must have been thinking of someone else." Belle laughed from across the room. Maybe she was thinking of someone who actually tells people what they want. Everyone laughed again. So I pulled the purple sweater over my head. I wore it the rest of the evening. No one noticed. No one complimented it. No one said anything. But on the drive back to Albany through freezing rain that night, a thought finally formed clearly in my mind. One day I'm going to stop pretending this doesn't hurt. The following spring, something happened that changed everything. In April, my mother mentioned on the phone that she was cleaning the garage. She didn't ask for help. She just mentioned it. And I showed up anyway. Because that's what I did. Show up. Help. Don't expect thanks. She asked me to grab the mail on my way in. Most of it was junk. Coupons. Catalogs. Advertisements. But one envelope stood out. It was thick. From First Heritage Federal Credit Union. Stamped in red letters across the top. Final notice. I didn't open it. It wasn't mine. But I saw enough. That night, lying awake in my old bedroom, I heard my parents talking through the wall. Their voices were quiet but tense. "We can't keep hiding this, Tom," my mother whispered. "We'll figure it out," my father said. "Don't you dare tell the girls." The next morning I said nothing. I smiled, helped clean the garage, ate the chicken salad my mother made without asking if I liked chicken salad. Then I drove back to Albany. But instead of going home, I stopped at a coffee shop, opened my laptop, and started digging. It took 3 days to find the full story. Public records, mortgage history, payment logs. The house had been refinanced twice. The last mortgage payment had been made 37 months earlier. The remaining balance? $87,412. My parents were about to lose their house. And nobody knew. Except me. And apparently, my sister. I called Belle the following Tuesday evening. "Hey," I said carefully. "Have you talked to Mom and Dad about the house lately?" There was a pause. Short, but telling. "What about the house?" she asked. I heard the tension in her voice immediately. "Belle," I said slowly, "I saw the bank letters." She sighed. Not shocked. Not confused. Just tired. "Yeah," she said. "Mom told me about it 6 months ago." My stomach tightened. "You knew?" "Of course I knew," she said. "But what do you expect me to do, Gina? Derek and I just bought our house. We can't take on their debt too. Did you at least talk to them about options?" I asked. "Financial advisors? Refinancing?" "Honestly," she said bluntly, "if they had managed their money better, this wouldn't have happened." I stared at the wall of my tiny apartment. Belle. The same sister whose college tuition my parents helped pay. The same sister whose wedding my father funded by working overtime for almost a year. The same sister whose down payment on her house came directly from my parents' savings. And now she was saying their crisis wasn't her problem. I didn't argue. I just hung up. Then I sat down at my kitchen table and opened a spreadsheet. Because numbers are easier than emotions. My savings account had $52,000. My year-end bonus was projected to be about $18,000. If I cut every extra expense in my life for 6 months, I could save another $18,000 to $20,000. Total. Just barely enough to cover the mortgage. It would leave me almost completely broke. 6 years of careful saving. Gone. I stared at the numbers for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called the bank. "Hi," I said. "I'd like to make payments on a mortgage account as a third party." And that was the moment the silver box story truly began. Because the next 6 months of my life would lead to one Christmas morning, one tiny box, and 10 seconds that changed my family forever. The first payment left my account on a quiet Monday morning. $3,500. I stared at the confirmation screen for a long time after clicking send. It wasn't just money. It was years of packed lunches, skipped vacations, and the discipline of saying no to things I wanted, so I could build a future. And now that future was draining away one transfer at a time. But I didn't hesitate. Because every time doubt crept in, I pictured the house. The small white house outside Syracuse where I had learned to ride a bike in the cracked driveway, where the kitchen window looked out over a maple tree that turned bright orange every fall, where my father used to sit on the porch steps after work, boots still dusty, watching the sunset. I wasn't saving a building. I was saving memories. The bank representative confirmed something important during our first call. As long as the full balance is settled before foreclosure filing, she said, third-party payments are acceptable. So I made a plan. 6 months. Every paycheck. Every spare dollar. Every bonus. No vacations. No restaurants. No new clothes. My life shrank to a simple equation: income minus mortgage payments. And month by month the number dropped. $87,412. $71,000. $55,000. $42,000. Each time the balance shrank, I felt both relief and fear. Relief because I was getting closer. Fear because I was getting closer to zero. The only person who knew what I was doing was my boss, Margaret Calloway. She was the CEO of the property technology company where I worked in Albany. When I requested an early bonus release, she called me into her office. Margaret read the paperwork quietly. Then she leaned back in her chair and looked at me over the top of her glasses. "Gina," she said gently, "you understand this will wipe out most of your savings." "I know. And you're doing it anyway." "Yes." She studied my face for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "The fact that you're willing to do this tells me everything I need to know about your character." She signed the approval form. "Just remember something," she added. "Don't ever let anyone make you feel small." By December, I was living like I had when I first moved to Albany. Simple groceries. Same old car. No extras. But I didn't feel poor. I felt focused. Because every payment brought me closer to the final number. And on December 19th, it happened. The last payment cleared. Mortgage balance. $0. The bank confirmed it 3 days later. The house was free. My parents didn't know yet. They thought they were still drowning. And that's when I decided how I would tell them. Christmas morning. With a small silver box. Snow was drifting lightly across the highway the morning I drove home. Not the heavy kind that sticks. Just soft flakes that made everything look quieter than it really was. The silver box sat on the passenger seat beside me. I had buckled it in with a seatbelt like it was another person. Inside the box were 3 things: a brass key, a white envelope, and the mortgage satisfaction letter. It didn't look like much, but it carried 6 years of sacrifice. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was already full. Cars lined the street. My Aunt Ruth's Subaru, Uncle Mike's pickup, Kevin's sedan, and Belle's sleek black Audi parked closest to the door. Of course, it was always closest to the door. I grabbed the small box and walked up the front steps. The moment I opened the door, the familiar chaos of Christmas hit me. Cinnamon candles, holiday music, voices overlapping in conversation, coats piled along the staircase. Belle sat on the sofa telling a story about a ski trip in Vermont. Derek stood beside the fireplace swirling red wine in a glass like he was in a commercial. My mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "Oh," she said. "You made it. Merry Christmas, Mom." She glanced briefly at the small box in my hand. "You can put that under the tree," she said. "We'll open gifts after brunch." No one asked how the drive was. No one asked how work was. The conversations simply continued around me, like water flowing around a rock. Except Aunt Ruth noticed. She smiled warmly from across the room. "Gina, sweetheart," she called. "Come sit with me." Brunch was my mother's annual performance. Glazed ham, scalloped potatoes, fruit salad with those little marshmallows she had been adding since the 1990s. Halfway through the meal, my mother stood and tapped her fork against her glass. "I want to make a toast," she announced proudly. Everyone looked up. "To Belle and Derek," she said. This year Belle was promoted to senior vice president at her firm, and Derek made partner at his law office. "We are so proud of them." Everyone clapped. Belle smiled modestly. Derek nodded like a politician accepting applause. Kevin turned to me. "What about you, Gina?" he asked. "Anything new?" Before I could answer, my mother spoke. "Oh, Gina's still at that little computer job." She said it brightly, like she was helping me. "She's a late bloomer." Belle laughed lightly. Not everyone peaks at the same time. 12 pairs of eyes drifted over me briefly, then moved on. The funny thing was, none of them knew the truth. Belle's firm had barely a dozen employees, and my little computer job had just helped close a $4.2 million property analytics deal. But I didn't correct them. Not yet. After brunch, I went into the kitchen for water. Belle followed me. She leaned against the doorway, with her arms crossed. "Can I give you some advice?" she asked. "About what?" "Your gift." She lowered her voice. "Whatever it is, just don't make it awkward." I blinked. "Awkward? Last year you gave that homemade coupon book." "It wasn't a coupon book," I said quietly. "It was a travel itinerary." She waved dismissively. "Same thing." Then she smiled smugly. "Derek and I got Mom and Dad a spa weekend in the Adirondacks." "That's nice." "It's already booked," she said proudly. I nodded. I didn't mention the mortgage payments I'd been quietly covering. I didn't mention the bank statements. I just rinsed my glass. "Thanks for the advice, Belle." The gift exchange began shortly afterward. The living room looked picture perfect. Tree lights glowing. Colorful wrapping paper stacked neatly. Belle's gift box sat in the center under the tree. Large. Gold. Impossible to miss. My silver box sat in the corner. Barely noticeable. Derek picked it up and turned it in his hand. "What's this?" he joked. "A ring box." Stacy leaned closer. "Maybe Gina finally got a boyfriend." "It's for Mom and Dad," I said calmly. My mother glanced at it briefly. "How sweet." Then Belle clapped her hands. "Okay, let me go first." She handed her large gold box to my mother. Inside was a framed photo of Belle and Derek and the spa voucher. My mother gasped happily. "Oh, this is beautiful." Everyone clapped again. Belle glowed with pride. And then the room grew quiet, because the only gift left was the small silver box. "Mine." My mother picked it up lightly between her fingers. She shook it once. It barely made a sound. Then she smiled. "It's light," she said. She looked around the room. "Let me guess." She laughed. "Another dollar store candle from the family disappointment." A few people laughed nervously. Belle looked down at her phone. "Just open mine again," she said casually. "It's actually worth something." That was the moment everything inside me finally shifted. 28 years of silence. 28 years of smiling politely. 28 years of being the afterthought. I stood up. The room quieted immediately. My mother still held the box. Her smile faded when she saw my expression. "Give it back," I said calmly. "What?" "The box." She frowned. "Don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic." My voice was steady. "You just called me the family disappointment in front of everyone here." The room froze. I held out my hand. "So, that gift isn't for you anymore." Slowly, she handed the box back. I held it against my chest for a moment. Then I spoke. "This was supposed to be your gift." I paused. "But I'm going to open it myself. And then you can decide if you deserved it." Silence filled the room. I untied the red ribbon. It slipped softly onto the floor. Then I lifted the lid. Inside the box was a brass key, a white envelope, and a folded document. I took the document out, unfolded it slowly, and held it up for everyone to see. Aunt Ruth gasped first. Her hand flew to her mouth. "What?" Kevin whispered. The paper was from First Heritage Federal Credit Union. The words were printed clearly across the top. Mortgage satisfaction letter below that were my parents' names. Tom Walsh. Diane Walsh. And beneath the payment record was a line labeled Paying Party. The name printed there was unmistakable. Gina M. Walsh. For a moment no one moved. Then my father slowly stood up. He walked toward me carefully. His hands were trembling. "Is this real?" he whispered. "Go check your desk drawer," I told him quietly. "The bank sent you a copy." He stared at me. Then he walked upstairs. The entire room sat in stunned silence. We could hear his footsteps above us. The opening of the desk drawer. The tear of an envelope. 2 minutes later, he came back downstairs. His face was red. His eyes were wet. And in his hand was the same letter. "It's real," he said hoarsely. "The mortgage 'tis paid." My mother looked at me like the world had tilted sideways. "You paid it?" I picked up the brass key from the box. "The locks were rekeyed after the title cleared," I said. "This house is yours. No debt. No bank." Her voice broke. "How much?" $87,000. She covered her face with both hands and began to cry. The room stayed silent for several long seconds after my father spoke. "It's real," he had said, holding the letter in trembling hands. "The mortgage 'tis paid." No one knew what to say. The Christmas music from the Bluetooth speaker continued playing softly in the background, completely out of place in a room full of stunned faces. My mother was still crying. Not the quiet, polite kind of crying people do when they're embarrassed. This was different. Her shoulders shook as she covered her face with both hands. 87,000? She whispered through her fingers. "Yes," I said. The number hung in the air like something too heavy to hold. Uncle Mike leaned forward slowly in his chair. "You're telling me," he said carefully, "that Gina paid off the entire mortgage?" Aunt Ruth wiped tears from her eyes. "That's exactly what she's saying." Kevin shook his head in disbelief. "On her own?" No one answered, because the answer was standing right in front of them. My mother finally lowered her hands. Her mascara had smudged slightly under her eyes. She looked at me like she didn't recognize the person standing in front of her. "How?" she asked weakly. I placed the brass key on the coffee table. "I started making payments 6 months ago." Her eyes widened. "You knew about the mortgage?" "I found the final notice in the mail back in April." My father looked down at the floor. My mother slowly turned toward him. "You told her?" "No," he said quietly. "I didn't tell anyone." Then his eyes moved back to me. "You figured it out?" "Yes." Kevin spoke again. "But why didn't you say anything?" I shrugged slightly. No one asked. The answer wasn't meant to be cruel. It was just the truth. Then Belle finally spoke. She had been sitting on the couch completely still since the moment the letter appeared. "I didn't know it was that bad," she said. Her voice sounded small. For the first time in my life, my sister sounded uncertain. The entire room turned toward her. "You did know," I said calmly. She stiffened. "You told me 6 months ago, remember?" My mother looked at Belle. "You knew about this?" Belle swallowed. Mom, you said not to worry about it." "I told you we were struggling," my mother replied, her voice trembling. "I asked if you and Derek could help with even one payment." Derek stared down at the floor. He didn't say a word. Belle's face flushed. "We had just bought our house," she said defensively. "We couldn't take on more debt." Aunt Ruth leaned forward slightly. Her voice was calm but firm. "Your sister paid $87,000 without asking for credit." Belle didn't respond. She just stared at the paper in my father's hands. My father turned back toward me. His voice was quiet. "Gina, how did you even have that kind of money?" "You thought I worked a little computer job," I said. He looked down. "I'm a senior data analyst," I continued. "I've been working at the same company for 6 years." The room stayed silent. "This year," I added, "my team helped close a property deal worth $4.2 million. Kevin blinked. "Wait, seriously?" "Yes." My mother looked stunned. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" I took a slow breath. "When exactly would that conversation have happened, Mom?" She didn't answer. So, I continued. "Between the times you called my job a chore? Or the times you called me the family disappointment?" Her eyes filled with tears again. "I didn't do this for praise," I said. "I did it because this house matters to me." I looked around the room. This is where I grew up. I learned to ride a bike in that driveway. I studied for exams at that kitchen table. And I didn't want to see it taken away. My voice softened. "But there's something I need you all to understand." Everyone listened. I was never the family disappointment. I looked directly at my mother. I just wasn't the daughter you liked showing off. She flinched slightly. But she didn't look away. My father suddenly stood up and walked toward me. His movements were slow and uncertain. Then, he did something he hadn't done in years. He hugged me, tightly. His shoulders shook slightly as he held me. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I should have been proud of you a long time ago." I felt my throat tighten. For 28 years, I had waited to hear something like that. Not applause. Not admiration. Just acknowledgement. My mother approached slowly. She looked nervous, like someone stepping toward something fragile. "Gina," she said softly. "I'm so sorry for what I said earlier." I nodded slightly. "You called me the family disappointment." Her eyes filled again. "I know. And you meant it." She shook her head. "I didn't mean it the way it sounded. But you said it." That truth settled heavily between us. "I don't want an apology just because of this," I said, gesturing toward the mortgage letter. Her voice trembled. "I know." I looked around the living room again. The Christmas tree lights reflected softly on the walls. "This family matters to me," I continued. "That's why I did what I did. But something has to change." My mother nodded slowly. "Yes. I can't keep being the afterthought. I can't keep being the punchline. I can't keep pretending those things don't hurt." She wiped her eyes. "You're right." The room slowly began to breathe again. Kevin quietly cleared his throat. Stacy put her phone away. Uncle Mike rubbed his forehead. Even Derek finally spoke. "That was an incredible thing you did, Gina." I nodded politely. "Thank you." Later that afternoon, people began leaving. The house felt quieter, more thoughtful, as if everyone was processing what had happened. Belle stood near the front door, putting on her coat. When I stepped onto the porch, she followed. Cold winter air filled the space between us. "I guess you hate me now," she said quietly. I shook my head. "I don't hate you." She looked surprised. "You should." "Maybe," I said. "But I don't." She looked down at the wooden porch boards. "I knew about the house," she admitted softly. "And I didn't help." "I know." She exhaled slowly. "Why didn't you say that inside? Why didn't you expose me?" "Because that's not who I am." She looked at me carefully. "We used to be close," she said. "We can be again," I replied. "But only if we start acting like equals." She nodded once. Then she turned and walked to the car. January 2nd arrived quietly. I was sitting at my desk in Albany when the confirmation email arrived from the county clerk. The deed had officially been recorded. Tom Walsh, Diane Walsh, sole owners. No debt, no liens, house fully paid. I forwarded the email to my parents. My father replied 30 minutes later. Just 2 words. "Thank you." My mother sent a much longer message full of emotional sentences and too many exclamation marks. It wasn't perfect, but it was sincere. Then I opened my banking app. Balance, $2,340. 6 years of saving had disappeared. But strangely, I didn't feel poor. I felt free, because the money had never been the most valuable thing I owned. My self-respect was. 2 weeks later, I drove back to my parents' house on a quiet Saturday. My mother opened the door immediately. She must have been watching the driveway. She hugged me tightly. "Come in," she said warmly. The house smelled like fresh coffee. As I walked into the living room, I stopped suddenly. The wall of photos had changed. There were now 13 frames. One new frame had been added between the family photos. It was a picture of me. My professional photo from LinkedIn. Navy blazer. Soft smile. My mother noticed me staring. "I printed it last week," she said nervously. "I hope that's okay." I smiled slightly. "It's okay." She hesitated. "I also bought navy blue placemats for the dining table." She looked almost shy. I remembered. For the first time in years, I believed her. My father walked in from the backyard. No phone in his hand. "Hey, kiddo," he said. "Want to help me fix the porch railing?" "Sure." Small things. Quiet things. But they meant everything. 3 weeks later, my phone buzzed late one night. It was a message from Belle. "I've been thinking about what you said on the porch. About being equals. I don't think I've treated you that way. And I'm sorry." I read the message 3 times. Then I replied, "Thank you." A moment later, another message appeared. "Coffee sometime? Just us." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed back, "I'd like that." The next Christmas felt different. Not perfect, but real. When I walked into the house, my mother hugged me and said, "Merry Christmas, sweetheart. I made your favorite mushroom risotto." She remembered. The living room had one more photo frame now. A picture of Belle and me sitting together in a coffee shop in Albany, laughing. My father stood up when I walked in. "How was the drive?" he asked. Belle arrived an hour later. She knocked before entering. And when I opened the door, she smiled. "Hey, sis." For the first time in my life. She meant it. People sometimes tell me I'm strong. But the truth is, strength didn't happen in that living room when I held up a piece of paper. The hard part happened months earlier, when I sat alone at my kitchen table deciding whether to help people who had never fully appreciated me, and choosing to do it anyway, not to earn love, but because it was right. You don't need your family's permission to know your worth. You don't need applause to build a life. And you don't need an apology to set boundaries. But if the people you love are willing to try, it's okay to stay and see what grows. My name is Gina Walsh. 2 years ago, my mother called me the family disappointment. Today, I know the truth. I never was. And neither are you.